What is a role player? I think we often consider this to be a less skilled player who takes a backseat to the main guys and kind of plays a boring game. But to me, it's more than this. I see a role player as a player who, despite what they can do, is able and willing to fit into the perfect role for any team. Then, when needed, can step out of it or elevate into other roles. This role can be a number of things depending on the situation, but the most important thing to understand is this. At each level, there are probably 1 to 2 players per team who are the guys. In the NBA, there are probably 30 to 40 of these guys, max. Everyone else, if they want to stick around, must master the art of fitting into a role on a team. Not doing certain things that maybe they are good at, and taking pride in some things that at first, they maybe didn't focus on much. And the guys who are able to do this make millions of dollars, or even just have really good pro careers, get a college scholarship, are always picked up at their local court, whatever it may be. Plus, it makes it so much easier to work up from there and become that guy, as we've seen with so many players over the years. And again, it's not to say that these players can't be killers. Pat Beverly averaged 38 in high school, as did plenty other current role players in the NBA and beyond, but they're willing to whittle down on what they do for the sake of longevity, rather than allowing their ego to take over. So the way I see it, there are 3 big types of role players, excluding bigs, which I'm going to work on another video to cover. There are 1, shooters who come in and stretch the floor, 2, the more slasher type defensive nightmare, and 3, backup point guards who bring an unmatched spark and comfort with the ball, which is a tough balance to find. We'll go over each one, and although you may have an idea of which one you are already, don't skip through the others, because you may find yourself applying some of the tips, and you'll realize that a lot of these players are kind of a mix between 2 sometimes, or at least take from the other type. So the more well-rounded, the better. So first off, our shooters. I'm not talking about someone who can shoot, but somebody who walks on the court and everyone goes, yo, that's a shooter, who got him? This obviously takes countless hours of work to become, so it's not easy, but it's doable. And the thing here that you'll really have to know is how to play off of other players who are more ball dominant. You can be the best shooter on the court, but if you're not constantly putting yourself in the right position to be open and to be seen on the perimeter, you're probably pretty replaceable because, well, you don't even pose a threat since you're not getting shots up. So it's constantly a game of monitoring where your defender is, where their attention is, and then where the open space is on the perimeter. Because if you're able to knock down these shots consistently, then this defender has to play a bit closer to you, can't help as much, and now the floor is space for the primary ball handlers due to your gravity. And speaking of gravity, this is a beautiful concept that I think is important to dive into and then for you to apply. What I mean by this is when you're an elite shooter, people tend to stick to you more. They run at you faster. They're more worried about you. So sometimes 2 defenders will come at you. And while sometimes this means less shots for you, it also means that your screens become much more useful for others to get open. Your off-ball movement attracts more players. And that in itself is a skill that helps teams win, and most coaches realize this. Then where your opportunity for elevation will come will be attacking closeouts. If you find the perfect spots on the court and you're knocking down shots, defenders are going to be hauling ass to get to you when you get even a bit of space, which means you have an unbelievable opportunity to now attack right off the catch in situations where defenders are in awful positions to guard. They're running at you, and it makes driving, pull-ups, and much more so much easier for you. That's when the easy buckets start coming in. And lastly, keep this in mind. When you only get a few shots a game, it's tough to have the same level of confidence and willingness to just let it fly without overthinking. But you got to. You got to shoot every shot like it's a game winner.
Shoot every shot like a game winner. You know how if you're shooting a game winner, like the game's tied and there's like 2 seconds, you're just excited and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go get this off. And then that's when it usually, that's why so many game winners I feel like go in, is because you just, unless you're down, you have nothing to lose. You're just, all right, let me let this fly because you're thinking about winning the game versus not missing the shot. So shoot literally if you can condition yourself to shoot every shot like a game winner, I swear to you, your percentage is gonna go up 5-10%.
And take advantage of your opportunities, or else you may experience a bit of this. And for more on how to become a shooter, well, you know I got a video on this. Next is the more athletic slasher defender archetype. And while shooters can theoretically make it on the court by just shooting and playing a little bit of defense, this requires being more of a Swiss Army knife. First off, where shooters must constantly find space on the perimeter, these players should be finding times to catch in good positions to score inside the arc. So finding times where you can get to the dunker spot for an easy dump off from a more ball dominant teammate and get easy buckets. Looking for 45 cuts where you're catching with momentum towards the rim and then finishing through traffic proficiently. And just making sure that anytime a teammate drives, you're that guy or that girl who's in the right spot to catch a nice dime and score the right way. And while it's not necessarily vital, it definitely helps if you're athletic enough to raise up and finish tough buckets over bigs here. Then if you remember how we talked about attacking closeouts, that's another huge one here. And assuming this player isn't also a knockdown shooter, it often takes a bit more creativity to attack these softer closeouts. But it's pretty essential to get good at, so you're catching as a threat rather than the defense thinking, they can't shoot or attack a closeout with ease, I'll just kind of leave them open. Plus, taking care of the little things is essential here. Having the willingness and feel to grab offensive boards. Creating opportunities in transition by making sure there's no lag between your team securing possession and beginning that fast break. Displaying a non-stop motor and being in amazing shape to play with this high energy the whole game, and a lot more. Oh, and then defensively, you got to be a dog, and a versatile one at that. That's kind of assumed. And it's another thing I got plenty of resources for. And if you can combine the shooter profile with that slasher or glue guy profile, even if you're not that athletic, you're never going to have to worry about being on a team ever again. And then lastly is that backup point guard role, where you're not going to be the player to score 20 a game, but you will be running an offense and taking care of the ball and the team's sanity. Especially as a smaller guard, you'll still need a ton of skill for this and probably will be called on to do a bit more than these other roles offensively. At times you're going to be that guy to beat defenders one-on-one if the offense breaks down. You're going to have to come off ball screens and create in the pick and roll. You're going to push in transition and start and even finish fast breaks. You're going to have more leeway in the mid-range with floaters. But this is only if you take care of the essentials, which most backups don't, and it's why they never get the chance to do the cooler stuff. So essential number one is ball security. Will you be able to turn the ball over at a very, very low frequency and ensure that every coach, player, and fan feels comfortable with the ball in your hands and running the offense? 2, can you control the pace of the game? Feeling the heartbeat of your team to push it when needed and slow it down in other times when it's getting too chaotic. And 3, can you absolutely lock up the opposing team's best guard? If you can only play backup defense, you'll max out at backup minutes. But if you can guard starting elite ones, then there's a chance that you can always get those starter minutes down the stretch. And once you take care of these and you get really good at distributing to teammates, the floor opens up for you and you have a bit more of a leash. And this is where so many backup point guards have had unbelievably long careers and low-key a ton of highlights, because they're able to display these high levels of skill a few times a game, but under that is developing the foundational skills like handling pressure and building top-tier IQ, which is just as important as your bag with the ball. And the last thing I'll mention that's vital for all of these is a lack of ego. 90+% of players in the game of basketball are probably underused. They could be doing more offensively, they could get more shots. But if you allow that ego to get to you and only want to do the most elite things that you know you're capable of, you're forgetting everything else that leads up to it. Playing a role gets you on the court, whether it's an NBA team or a pickup game where everyone wants to pick you up. If you take care of a role and star in that, number one, you'll get freaking paid. And number two, you'll have the chance to start working up from that bit by bit. But understand that this takes dropping the ego and getting to work on what you can do right now. Get to it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you'll apply these things. I know it's not easy, but if you're able to take this new perspective and go into your games with this, I think it can help a lot.